So we got 4 sneaky ways in which you might be spending money without realizing it, plus the latest on Social Security, and then we're also going to cover what is a disturbing trend about how folks are making investment decisions based on political perspective that ultimately is going to undermine their long-term investment results. So joining me on this week's program to help us cover all of those topics, Zach Kester, welcome to the program. Pleasure to have you here.
Happy to be here. Always enjoy joining you on the radio program.
Very good. Excellent, excellent. Well, of course, the radio program is called Dollars and Cents for a good reason, because that's where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, coming to you on a host of stations along with a slew of podcasts platforms. Make sure you check out all of those channels courtesy of our website, nelsonfinancialplanning.com. My name is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary. Zach is one of our certified financial fiduciaries. We got a team of folks at Nelson Financial Planning that are ready to help you improve your life with a successful and cost-effective financial plan. So, original air date of this program means that this coming Friday is the 4th of July.
It is, absolutely. I'm very excited for it. Are you excited for it?
I am excited for it. Always a great, fun holiday. Many times we are over at the beach. One of the cool things of being, and I would imagine this is probably any beach community in Florida, but in particular in New Smyrna, they send off the fireworks all up and down the beach. So it's kind of neat to see.
It's a beach-wide party.
It's a beach-wide party. That's a long beach over there in New Smyrna too. So how about you? What's the week ahead look like for you?
Doing a little bit of traveling as well. Going back to Indiana, like I do a couple of times a year, visit family. Then my birthday's next week as well, also. So.
Excellent, very good. Yes. Well, speaking of Indiana, probably you are still hurt, if you will, as a result of what happened last Sunday. Hard to believe it was last Sunday.
Very quick.
Your basketball team sadly fell just a little short in the NBA Finals.
Sad in some ways and not sad in others. Sad that they lost, but not sad to not be staying up till midnight every couple of days to catch the ending of the game, because they were so miraculous in a couple of those games that you just had to stay up and watch the ending.
Fair point. There was no tapping out early on any of those games. That is for sure. Another basketball headline came across this past week, which was kind of interesting, and that is besides the Magic basically trading away every pick that they have, I think, the other big headline was that the Lakers were sold for a few shekels, if you will.
A few. I think that number, a few shekels, ends up being 10 billion. So that's quite a few shekels to count.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Should I have invested and bought the Lakers in 1979 when Jerry Buss bought them for $67 million, or should I have taken my $67 million and just invested it in the S&P 500? Which do you think would have given me a better return, a better net result? Because, I mean, it seems like that went well. $67 million turns into $10 billion. I mean, that's not bad.
It's 149 times the original, so you would probably look at that and say, yeah, not a bad turnaround. But when we did the math on this, you would have gotten $13 billion. So it's a difference of $3 billion with a B, billion dollars.
30% more. Now, I guess obviously the shortfall is I didn't have 67 cents in 1979, let alone 67 million. But, interesting where you see the headline say, oh, my goodness, that is a huge number. Okay, how could that's an unbelievable rate of return, but all you really had to do to achieve those same results was to just invest the money
and sit back.
Leave it alone.
Maybe go watch a few Lakers games.
You could go watch. Yeah, you probably did get some perks.
Sure.
There's probably some value to the perks of going and being able to watch the Lakers. I'm sure there were some good parties after some of the championships that they were winning along the way. I just thought that was neat when we ran the numbers on that one.
Yeah, there's absolutely, most likely had some very exciting times and memories and all that sort of stuff, but we wanted to look at it just from the dollar standpoint.
Interesting stuff when you ran the numbers. And then, of course, speaking of the numbers, hard to believe, tomorrow, Monday, will be the last day of the second quarter. So we are officially at the turn, if you will, here in the year 2025, which means, of course, that last week we had at the office at Nelson Financial Planning, we had our annual mid-year conference call that we do every year for our clients. Pretty good attendance actually on the video call for that one.
Yeah, it seemed to be pretty well attended.
Yeah, no, very good. And so we wanted to share with you some of those the key takeaways, if you will. And obviously the year has had a lot of unexpected turns so far, particularly with interest rates and inflation, and obviously the Middle East.
A lot of ups and downs and left and rights in every which way.
That is for sure. Yeah, inflation remains a bit lower than expected. Interest rates probably a bit higher than what was expected, and certainly corporate earnings and the economy as a whole seem to be a bit more on a growth trajectory than what was sort of expected kind of going into the year.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So that was part of what we talked about, and of course the tax bill is coming up. Interestingly, our featured speaker seemed confident that it would pass this week, or at least the Senate version.
Right? Yeah, he was very confident about it.
Which I was surprised. And then the other thing that was interesting, Zach, about the conversation was that a lot of people are obviously focused on the bill as a continuation of the income tax rates that are all set to expire in 2025. And certainly that is the core of what is in that bill. But the reality is that there's also a lot of pro-growth provisions in there in the form of some of the accelerated depreciation and things like that are designed to encourage spending by corporate America. And so that ultimately will be a pretty significant change that could certainly continue to boost the profits of corporate America. Also had a interesting conversation, of course, about Social Security. Right, we've got some conversation on that coming up here in the program about the latest and greatest on that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be sharing some interesting numbers about where Social Security might be headed.
Yes, no, that is for sure. Along with, we also discussed sort of the downgrade, the credit downgrade of the U.S. by Moody's, sort of the third credit agency to sort of finally get around to downgrading the U.S. It's interesting back when the first credit rating agency downgraded the U.S. Back in 2011, and that was Standard & Poor's. Big reaction in the market, and reality is, at this point, not much of a reaction.
Not much. It's been enough years that it's kind of
old news.
Old news.
Yeah.
You're right.
No, that is correct. Some good comments on sort of Europe, both from spending, but the real issue in Europe continues to be, and will most likely continue indefinitely, is there's no sort of real cohesion, no federal government, if you will, that ultimately can sort of drive policy. The analogy was, imagine Texas and California trying to kind of come to a decision independently.
That seems like a bit of a far cry.
Correct, without the federal government to overview that. So anyway, good conversation. A lot of, I guess, reasons. We shared a lot of reasons for optimism in terms of some of the growth that might very well be expected for the rest of the year, 2025. We'll find out how that all plays out, obviously, in the weeks and months ahead here on Dollars and Cents. We'll slide to a break. This is Joel Garris, joined with Zach Kester of Nelson Financial Planning on Dollars and Cents. we will transition to Social Security. That might need a little bit of help. Obviously, Zach, I think you saw the latest out of this because you were the one who gave me the article.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, of course, Social Security, very important program to a lot of different Americans. Average of 69 million Americans receive benefits from Social Security on a monthly basis, and they pay out a total of $1.6 trillion of annual benefits.
It's a whole lot of money. Clearly, the discussion we're about ready to have in terms of the state of Social Security impacts all of us. I suppose the further you are away from it, the greater the impact might be. So since I'm a little bit closer to it than you, Zach, I might not have quite the impact, but those that are more than 20 years from it, they might have to see a very, very different program.
This is one of those times where youth may not be in your favor.
Correct. And that's the combination of the issue, right? It is. You know, aging population and smaller share of workers certainly increases that problem pretty dramatically. So what's the headline that hit this past week?
So the headline that hit is that Social Security is not going to be able to pay its full benefits in 2034.
Which is not that far away.
Which is not that far away, but it is 1 year sooner than they reported last year.
So even closer. Here we go, another year, and now that date has shifted up. So why did it get, I guess, worser? Yeah.
So according to the report, Social Security's outlook worsened by several reasons, but the chief among them being a decision by Congress in a bipartisan bill.
Very important.
Very important to make that comment.
Yep.
To change the benefit formula in a way that provides more money for certain public sector workers, such as firefighters and teachers and police officers.
No, and that's the windfall elimination provision that legislation addressed, and certainly made a difference. I know for my mom, and I think we've shared on a prior radio program, she wound up seeing a pretty significant jump in her Social Security. But again, if you're increasing a number of folks' Social Security payment, well, then guess what? It ain't in as good as financial shape anymore when you do that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and without an act of Congress, and mind you, this will take an act of Congress to fix, benefits could drop by 19% within the next decade.
Yeah, and this is where people get a little bit focused on sort of the headline of Social Security's running out of money. The reality is when we talk about that, it's really the trust fund, which is a major part of Social Security, but the vast majority of what funds Social Security is still you and I and the rest of the working folks out there that contribute each and every paycheck into Social Security. So it's the trust fund, which is why it's a reduction of benefits, not Social Security itself.
Absolutely. And that is part of the issue of the smaller pool, right? Yeah. We're coming to a point where we have a smaller pool of workers to pay into Social Security.
Yep. No question at all. Now, that was just part of the headline because there was also a headline about Medicare, Medicaid, all that good stuff.
Right. It also mentioned Medicare. The Hospital Insurance Trust Fund would not be able to pay in the future either, with the date of being 2033, which is 3 years earlier than they projected in last year's report. At that point, Medicare reserves would be depleted, and income going into the program, which happens from everyone's paycheck, like we mentioned, would only be able to cover 89% of promised benefits.
So the important distinction is that these dates, when you hear these dates, when you see these headlines, the reality is that it has to deal with sort of the backup pool of funds for both of these programs that ultimately is getting chipped away at, and if they don't do any changes, then it's going to be all chipped away at these years down the road.
Absolutely.
Which only seem to be coming sooner than what you might expect.
And so far, every year they do a report, the date backs up even closer. So
what's a person to do, I guess, in that backdrop? And I guess you got to plan accordingly.
I would say plan ahead.
Yeah, I mean the need to plan ahead and be prepared is probably more important than ever before. Look at your finances, particularly I think if you are younger. I mean, obviously the closer you are to Social Security, the more likely you're going to see less change. But the further away you are, you could certainly see a larger portion of change. So make sure you think that through from a financial perspective. Perhaps one of the fundamental suggestions that we would make is that make sure, for example, that mortgage is all paid off before you get to retirement. That way you don't have to worry about the payments. If your Social Security is not what you thought it was going to be, then hey, at least you don't have that mortgage payment. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that can make a huge difference. So how else can you fix this? You could reach out to your politician. Very important. Reach out because, like I mentioned, it is going to take a literal act of Congress to fix this. And so they may have a couple ways to fix this up, right? It wouldn't be the first time that they've changed the age of your full retirement age, much like they did when they went from 65 to 67. So one idea they might do is move it for folks that are under 40 years old. Of course, we don't want to undercut anybody, like you mentioned, that is close to retirement, close to full retirement age. So maybe they'll start at the age of 40 and below. Maybe your full retirement age is going to be 70 now instead of 67.
Right. No, those are the kinds of solutions that we've certainly seen in the past, and that was a bit of the discussion at our mid-year sort of video conversation that we had with our clients this past week that we were talking about earlier in the program, where we kind of got into that a little bit. I guess those years, while it seems like those years are close, I guess they're not quite close enough to really push politicians to kind of dig into and make some of the hard decisions that you're going to have to see when it comes to Social Security. But again, those, as you just pointed out, Zach, those aren't necessarily hard decisions because we've kind of seen those solutions before.
Sure.
And it really just has to deal with kind of tweaking some of the eligibility requirements and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, at the end of the day, something has to give, if you will. Something has to happen on that point, and that might be a solution for them, is to adjust the age again.
Sure, no question at all. The solutions are out there. It's just a question of when, in fact, they will happen. So, speaking of politics, here's an interesting one where more and more people are unfortunately letting politics, or I guess I will say their political leaning, determine their investment strategy. History tells us that that's a bad decision, but wow, the proportion of people that are doing that is pretty stark right now.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So the gap between the perception of the stock market has never been wider. I mean, it's just astronomical. A poll that was done this spring showed that Democrats who expected stocks to decline over the next 6 months exceeded Republicans by 59 percentage points.
Wow. That's just like a whole different perspective, right? So if you're a Democrat, you think the stock market, the percentage of Democrats who think that according to the survey, the percentage of Democrats who think that the market's going to go down over the next 6 months exceeded the amount of the Republicans who thought that by 59 percentage points.
That's a huge number.
It's big. It's like the perspective is like two different Americas kind of thing. So, and that then is impacting people's investment decisions. So we want to talk a little bit more about this as we continue the program here on Dollars and Cents. So we are covering, I guess, maybe a little bit of a hot button topic here in the form of, we talked about Social Security in that last segment. Now we've shifted gears a little bit about the political leanings of Americans out there and how that is impacting perception. And these gaps are just unbelievable and some of the biggest gaps that we've ever seen in this polling data. So why don't you recap that stat that you shared with our listening audience just before the break, Zach?
Sure. So a poll that was done this spring showed that Democrats who expected stocks to decline over the next 6 months exceeded Republicans by 59 percentage points.
Yeah, so the percentage of Democrats who expected the market to go down was way up here. The percentage of Republicans who expected the market to go down was way down here, and that gap, 59 percentage points.
Percentage points. On the flip side, meanwhile, Republicans expected stocks to increase over the same time, topped Democrats by 47%.
So the percentage of Republicans who thought that the market was going to go up, okay, it was up here, and then percent down here, Democrats, that 47% gap. These gaps are some of the biggest gaps that we've ever seen in partisan perspective of what the stock market's trajectory is going to be. And really the largest divide in these Gallup polls going back, 20, 25 years. I mean, what was interesting is that if you go back to like George Bush and in the war in Iraq, which was obviously unpopular at the time, only about 13 percentage points gap between, just for perspective purposes. So really just amazing how big this gap is right now.
Yeah, it's ginormous, and that's a very interesting point, given the pivotal moment of that point in the U.S. and to see a gap of 13% compared to the numbers that we just shared. That's pretty astronomical.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think, and what really will make you think is when you think about what the market data looks like, right? So when you think about kind of how that performance is, whether it's a Democrat in the White House or a Republican in the White House, there was an interesting stat, an analysis that we saw that shows just how much, if you put $1,000 in, if you had done that upon President Eisenhower's inauguration in 1953, right? And then subsequently, you only held that investment when a Republican was in the White House, then you would have had about 30-odd thousand today. Okay, if you did it the exercise sort of the opposite way, where you only stayed invested when a Democrat was in the White House, well, you'd have a little bit more. I think the difference there was about maybe another 20-odd thousand, so 30,000 versus 50,000. And you may say, oh, well, my goodness, that sounds substantive. Until you get to what happens if you just put it in and let it stay invested through all those different Democratic administrations, all those different Republican administrations. Winds up being a pretty big number, doesn't it, Zach?
Winds up being 1.9 million at the end of the day.
Huge amount, not just tens of thousands of dollars. So before you start to make decisions on your investment allocation and what it should be, and to take that sort of a decision through the political lens, we would really encourage you to think twice about that. The stats are against you. History is against you. And by the way, aren't there midterms every 2 years?
Every 2 years. So, you got to flip-flop pretty frequently.
And the next midterms are like 16 months away. I mean, this happens so quickly, but yet you've got a dramatic difference in perception of the market. The biggest difference we've had, according to the polling data, ever between Democrats and Republicans. And I will tell you, put all of that aside, the reality is that you have to maintain a consistent approach. That analysis going back to putting $1,000 in 1953 and what it turns into by just being consistent clearly beats any of the other options in terms of how you invest based upon who's in the White House or who isn't.
And the data is there.
The data is there. Yep, indeed. And it's consistent. But the gap's pretty big. So hopefully folks are not making decisions that are undermining their long-term investment results based on where things are in the political spectrum. So speaking of where things are, there's a lot of sneaky ways, Zach, that we pay and spend money without even realizing it. And you've identified 4 different sort of ways that we're going to share with our audience this week on the program about things to really watch out for.
Things to take a look at least. And the very first one being auto pay, which, those gym memberships or the streaming services or the apps, while very convenient to have auto pay, it gets out of your brain. And so you no longer think I'm sending money to these people every month or quarterly or however you pay annually. And so the thought isn't there anymore. So you just kind of forget about it.
Well, and sometimes you even forget about like what it is or how to log in.
Where it is, what your password is.
Correct. All of that. I mean, I got one going on right now, and it's this charge for Honor Society. It's called Honor Society. I know it's one of the kids. They can't remember which one of them it was. They certainly don't remember, what it wound up being, but yet it just keeps showing up, and that's frustrating. What can we do about that?
Yeah, and in a 2024 Yahoo Finance report found that the average consumer spends $1,000 per year on subscription. So how do you fix this? Well, you do a subscription audit, if you will. Just compile them. You could break out a pad and a pen and just write down, well, here's my subscription, here's my Netflix, my Amazon, what have you. Here's how much I pay them every month, and here is how often I use it.
Well, I got to track down this Honor Society thing. This thing's really bad. Every year, I'm like, I don't know. Who says this? I don't know. Yeah, it's not good. The subscription audit would be a very good thing. What else is out there to sneaks up on us?
So you shared that you are part of this. You are part of this, of a subscription that is out there floating who knows where.
That is for sure.
I know I have done it as well. I have signed up for a subscription to catch a big game, and then, of course, weeks later, I have forgotten all about the game. Game is way over, and then I see the charge. So how do you solve this? Well, obviously, there's one way, and you can write everything down, write down your subscriptions, and just keep track. Another way to do it is to use technology. You can use temporary card details and then decide, do I really want to use this month to month, or try it for a month and then let it go.
Yeah, those free trials that you're talking about, where you say, "Oh, I'm gonna just sign up so I can watch this movie or this show or this game," they turn into paid subscriptions more often than not.
They do. That's a very sneaky part of that. A lot of times, the free trials are coupled with auto pay. So after your free trial ends, it flips over to auto pay. You might forget all about it. Life is busy. And then all of a sudden you've got this subscription that you probably will forget about at some point.
Good way. Any suggestions on how to combat that issue? Besides, don't sign up for a free trial.
Again, back to,
because it ain't free.
Back to the temporary card details, of course. So if you run temporary card details, well, at the end of your free trial, the numbers aren't going to be there to run the card, and you might have forgotten about the subscription, but at least you don't have to pay for it.
That's not a bad idea. That is for sure. Well, we got a couple of more things that we want to talk about in this particular category of those sort of sneaky ways in which we are all, as Americans, spending money that we do not need to spend. And that doesn't make good financial sense, right?
Never does.
That just doesn't make sense at all. And after all, the program entitled Dollars and Cents is designed to help you make sense out of those decisions. So with that, we're going to take a break. This is Joel Garris, Zach Kester of Nelson Financial Planning on Dollars and Cents. So we're talking about some of the sneaky ways that we spend money as just normal human beings, but it really, at the end of the day, Zach, these are not good ways to spend money because they sneak up, and all of a sudden we're spending money that maybe we don't really want to spend.
Maybe not, and you might not even be getting any use out of the money that you're spending. That's the worst case scenario, is you're paying for something that you have forgotten about and you don't even use.
So before the break, we were talking about two of those ways. The big one being sort of auto pay, where you sign up for this stuff, gym memberships, streaming services, whatever the case may be. And then once they've got your credit card, it's probably not super easy to cancel it. So it just keeps rolling along every single month. That's pretty much how all sort of gyms are set up. That's why there's a gym on every corner, I guess, right? And then this notion of those free trials, right? Free, that's free. Good. What could possibly go wrong with free?
Free. Well, the thing that can go wrong is they can become not free very quickly, sometimes within about 2 weeks.
Because anytime you're getting free, what they always require you to do is put your credit card information in. And ultimately, then, voila, that turns into a paid subscription if you do not cancel within that certain period of time. You had a great suggestion, though, on this one. What was the suggestion that you shared in the prior segment?
The suggestion is to use temporary card details. And this is just good in general for online buying. You don't necessarily want to hand out your credit or debit card number to every vendor on the internet. So there is good services out there in which you can plug in your accurate information and then generate temporary cards, if you will.
Temporary credit card information that then gets used and can get redirected. Yeah, no, that's a very valuable suggestion. You got a couple of other ways in which sort of these sneaky expenses creep up on us. And ultimately, as you were saying, this costs every American well over $1,000 a year, probably much more than that.
Probably much more. Yeah, that was just the standard. So the next sneaky way would be the overdraft fees and convenience fees of your bank. Which can get a lot of people. That overdraft fee is particularly expensive, sometimes $30 per charge.
Sure. Yeah.
Per charge. So that adds up quickly.
Sure. If you overdraft and then 3 or 4 things wind up hitting because they were on auto pay or what have you, then that can accumulate up pretty quickly. And the same thing with ATMs and those kinds of things.
Yeah, they usually charge an out-of-network ATM might charge you $3 or $5, which might not seem like a big deal if you do it once in a blue moon. But if you go to a out-of-network ATM once or twice a week, then that's going to add up over time.
No, absolutely, and that's certainly an important consideration. And then in terms of other sneaky charges, and I guess this has to deal with how we all shop today, right? The digital age of shopping, we put stuff in carts, and we can quickly, it's like a swipe, and then poof, I've already placed the order. They've got all of my shipping information, and then it's just going to show up tomorrow. That's, at the end of the day, maybe not a good thing.
Maybe not. They just make it just too easy nowadays. They try a lot of different things to do within the different retailers. They can trigger FOMO, fear of missing out. They don't want you to miss out on this hot limited time item, if you will. So before you know it, you've spent $50 and you're thinking, when am I ever even going to use this thing?
Yeah, no. Well, you've got a good suggestion, which we were preparing for the show. You mentioned this to me. This is a good idea. I hadn't necessarily heard of it. What's the suggestion here when it comes to these digital carts?
The suggestion is the 24-hour rule. So go ahead, put it in your cart if you want, but then forget about it for 24 hours. Or maybe even a couple of days, and then come back to it a couple of days later and say, do I really want this? Do I even really need this? Am I going to end up using this at all? So just to bring some of your thought process back into it, to get out of the quick dopamine rush of I must have this is a limited time offer, I need to get on this. Separate yourself from that and then come back a couple days later and look at it with a microscope and say, do I really want this? Do I really need this?
The amount of money that I think just slips through our fingertips in today's world on a regular basis is just amazing. And I guess, part of it is obviously the transition away from hard currency, hard dollars, right? There's all kinds of studies that say that if you are using currency, if you're using dollars, then you're going to feel the impact of spending so much more than just a click or a tap or a swipe.
Yeah, there are so many scientific studies out there that show the pain, if you will, when you hand over a dollar bill compared to when you tap. It's just another tap of the plastic, so not any emotion attached to it. Whereas if you have something physical that you say, I have to give this away, there's a little bit of reluctancy in that.
So to kind of connect all of the dots of what we've been talking about on the program today, the reality is that if you're thinking about Social Security and the current state that it is in, and obviously thinking about these reports that say that the trust fund is running out, and you're looking at, I'm going to have to figure this out. I'm going to have to save more. Well, then this is a great opportunity to help people save more without necessarily changing behavior.
Right. Yeah, you just reduce some of your subscriptions. And a lot of people don't think about the possibility of just reducing your subscriptions. I know that there's many subscriptions out there that have the same movies, that have the same TV shows. There's a lot of overlap with these. Now, there are some that are specific, but a lot of these have overlap. So while you're doing your subscription audit, maybe look and say, sure, okay, here's my 5 favorite shows. Do I have those across the board, or do I need a whole bunch of different subscriptions? And if they're all on one, just pick one and save the money.
Correct. Rather than so certainly the auto payment of those subscriptions, whether it's the online services or gym memberships, we all know that that happens, and you're not getting full usage of that. The free trial conversions was sort of the other one that you mentioned, Zach. That where you sign up for the free trial, and then all of a sudden it winds up being automatic, and now you're paying for it. And then those overdraft and convenient fees, that was a big part of it. And then, of course, online purchasing. And that's always been sort of more and more of an issue, particularly with the Amazon cart, I guess, started all of that. But that 24-hour rule, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, it's great to really pan back and, think about what you're spending your money on. If you don't just instantaneously go for the grab, you might come back and say, well, I don't even really like that at the end of the day. I don't really need that. It's just the fear of missing out. It's the limited time offer that's driving your purchase.
No, and to that point, put it in the cart, but give yourself a day or two to really think about, do I really need that? That is for sure. So as we were talking at the top of the hour, obviously the week coming up is the 4th of July week. July 1, which is Tuesday, marks the start of the third quarter, sort of the back half of 2025. It also marks the start of something kind of fun that we do at the office each and every summer, right, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited about this. Enjoy this every year.
And that is our school supply drive. So the office is open during normal business hours to collect new school supplies, along with old electronics for recycling. We do that from July 1 to September 1, benefiting a gift for teaching and tools for Seminole Schools. So if you're interested in participating in that, just swing by the office anytime between 9 and 5 from July 1 to September 1 for our back to school supply drive. Hard to believe here in Florida. School starts like early August.
Oh, early August comes up quick around here.
It really does. No question at all on that. So happy 4th of July, Zach. You got any good stories of why one should not be playing with fireworks?
I do have a good story to share. This was, probably 7 or 8 years ago now. It wasn't quite 4th of July weekend, but it was a weekend or so before. I was working, as I've shared before, I was a fireman in the Indianapolis area, and it was probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And we get a call for a barn fire probably about 2 or 3 miles down the road. And we immediately take off out of the firehouse, and I could see right where the fire is. Why? Because the barn was full of fireworks.
Had your own little mini fireworks display, or maybe large fireworks
No
display.
question about where we were headed. We could see it from a couple miles away.
Be careful out there. Have fun and enjoy. Wear sunscreen. Stay away from fireworks. Enjoy the 4th. This is Joel Garris and Zach Kester of Nelson Financial Planning, and this has been Dollars and Cents.